So let's pick up where we left off from the previous video. We had set up our project. Now it's time to go ahead and actually write some code. So first thing that I want to do is just set up some styles, and then we will create the header. And once the header is done, we'll move on to the next part, which is the banner. So if we open up the style sheet, let's go ahead and get that cleared out. Let's go ahead and get started by just adding our font variable. So if we just create a $sign font, and we are using Helvetica New, so I can already go ahead and add that. To get the fallback fonts, what I like doing is using a help from VS Code. So let's just close this font one out for now, and then write font family. And it gives you a list of the fonts or the fallback fonts that you could use. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Apple system. And then if this isn't an Apple machine, it will render the Sego UI. And so I'm just going to copy everything from Apple system towards the end. But if we hit Option Z, it will wrap our text. So let's go ahead and copy this section, get rid of the body, and then add a comma, and then just write the Apple system. So this is our font that we're going to use. Next, we're going to introduce our color variables. And we have white, which is FFF. We have black, which is 000. Then we have our maroon color, which is 8, and then all the 3s, and then finally end it with an E. 8, 4 3s, and an E. Then the off-white, which is sort of like a little gray. And that one is F2, F4, F5. That's awesome. So we've got our colors set. Next thing we want to, don't forget to add the semicolon there. Next thing we want to do is just do HTML, comma body, and we can write font family and assign it to the font variable. And then finally, just make sure that the font size, the default font size, is 16 pixels. We are using rems in this project, so whatever your font size is on your HTML and body, it will reference that. Now let's go ahead and save this, and then we are going to create our container, and then we'll move on from CSS to our header.js. But what the container is going to be is a width of 1640, set a minimum width of 1640, and a margin of 0 auto. And then in Sass, you could include your breakpoints or your media queries within the element. So we can just do @media, and then set it to a max-width of 1440 pixels. And we are just going to copy the widths and the min widths here. So we're setting the width of the container on a viewport of 1440 to 1280 pixels. And then let's just copy this. And then for our 1280 pixel, we are setting it down to a width of 976. And finally, for our 976 viewport, we are setting it to a width of 768. Now this is just a very basic setup for our containers. There are better ways to do containers, and I would recommend you following them. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to keep it a very basic container without any rows, and we'll leave it as that. So go ahead and exit out your style.scss. Let's go ahead and open our header.js and get to work. So what we can do with our header is we can go ahead and get rid of the prop types import. Get rid of that, and we can get rid of our prop types on the bottom. We can get rid of everything nested inside the header, so let's go ahead and do that. And finally, get rid of these inline styles, and then make sure we add the closing bracket for our header. We can also get rid of this site title prop. We don't need it. And we can leave this as a functional component because we don't necessarily need to write any JavaScript. So within our header, what we could do is create a div, and we could set the class name of our first div to container. Our next div is going to be our logo, so set class name to logo. And within the logo, let's go ahead and add a link. And inside our link, we could write adency. And for our attribute, we could say to, and we're just going to direct it back to this main directory, which is the home page. Outside the div logo, we can create our navigation. So go ahead and create a div with the class name of navigation. And inside the navigation div, let's go ahead and do a nav element. And we can just list out our links. So go ahead and do link. And the first one's going to be about. And it's going to be to, and it's going to / about. And we can copy this link 2 more times. And so the second one is going to be work. Change the link. And then the last one is contact, and we can change that link to contact as well. That's going to do it for our header.js. Let's go ahead and jump into index.js and import our header component. So we can just create a comment and just write import components. We're going to import header from, not from, and then components / header. Save that, and let's render out our header. So again, we are using a functional component, and let's just add a div. So we've got our navigation here on our site. We've got Odunsi, which is the logo, about, work, and contact. If we select one of these links, it will take us to the 404 page, simply because these links, or this directory, the contact, the page hasn't been created. So if we jump back in our project and inside pages we create a contact.js, it would not direct us to 404 page since that directory is made. But this looks pretty ugly, so let's go ahead and add some styles to it. Jump back into our styles.scss and let's create a section specifically for our header. Now, one thing that I did miss on our header is the fact that in our container, we have these 2 divs that are not nested in the same div. So what we could do is, let's go ahead and copy this. And inside our container, we want to set another div and call this inner header. This will allow us to use Flexbox within the inner header rather than needing to add it to our container, since we don't want to mess with this class. Go ahead and save that. The result should stay the same, but it should reflect once we finish the styles. So let's go ahead and do our skeleton first, which is nesting all of our class names and our elements. So we've got header, then we have inner-header within the header, and then inside inner-header we have .logo, and inside that we have the a tag. Outside of our logo we do have our navigation, so we could do .navigation. And inside the navigation class we have a nav element, and inside that we have an a tag. This is going to be an a tag when we're styling it, but the a tag is referencing our links. So we've got the skeleton all set. Let's go ahead and style it. The height of our header is going to be set to 80 pixels. The width is set to 100%. Position is going to be absolute, with a top of 0 pixels, and since it is our header, we want it to be above all of our other elements, so we're going to set the z index to 10. And when I typically write CSS, I don't necessarily have any order of how I place my styles. Typically, I like to kind of group them, for example, like height and width together. If I'm doing top here, I'll add left, right, and whatever, and kind of in the same section. Some people do alphabetical order, but it's really up to you. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. I don't necessarily have a specific order. Inside our inner-header, we are going to use Flexbox. So go ahead and set the display not to inline, but to flex. Align the items to center. This will allow us to align any of the nested items to the center vertically, so it centers them all vertically. And justify content center allows us to do it horizontally, but we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to justify the content but add a space between. This will allow us to have space between our logo and our navigation. And then finally, for our inner header, we want to set the height to the 80 pixels, similar to what we have on our header div. If we look at what we have so far, you could see the Flexbox working the way we want it to. We did set a space between, and that allows us to give us this space right here. Let's go ahead and finish this. So in our logo, we want to access the a tag. Let's set the font weight to 700. We're going to add a text decoration of none, since it is an a tag. And our letter spacing is going to be set to 1.5 pixels. Finally, the color of our logo is going to be just black. Save that, and let's move on to the navigation. We're not going to write any CSS for the navigation or the nav. It's going to be all of our A tags. So add a margin of 0 top and bottom and 20 pixels left and right. This will allow us to space out our items with a 20 pixel margin. Add a text decoration of none. Give it letter spacing of 1.75 pixels. We're going to do text-transform to uppercase. This will turn all of our letters to a capital letter. And the font size is going to be 0.75 rem. Color is black. And finally, we want to access the last child and give it a margin right of 0. Since we are giving each item margin of 20 pixels left and right, the one on the very end shouldn't have a margin because we want it to stick to the far right of our container. So on the last child, go ahead and just do margin dash, where is it, right, to 0 pixels. Save that and let's see what we've got so far. So we've kind of got our navigation working and looking great. That's going to do it for the second part of our series. We have completed the header, and in the next part we're moving on to the banner. If you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content.